And all it is, it's simple.
So the big question is, what are top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? To get the answers, we interview top real estate agents to learn their secrets to success. Listen, we believe every agent should make a minimum of $100,000 per year, and we're on a mission to make this happen. We've already helped over 100 agents achieve this with our coaching. So if you want to fast track your business growth, get to your first $100,000 in GCI or add another $100,000 in GCI using social strategies, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com, or you can just click the link in the description below. Also, just make sure to follow us, hit that subscribe button, and if you get any value from this at all, please tell a friend and leave us a review. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
I think that is a nice pivot into, your second topic, which is about, the marketing and the macros. You said, like, you've been writing a newsletter for over 30 years. You've got, 65,000 people on your email list, 5,000 friends on Facebook. These are all people that you're connected with on the macro, as you put it. So talk to us a bit more about the macro side of things, the marketing side of things, the newsletter, how you've ended up building that, the value it's provided, and unpack that for us.
Yeah. So the newsletter, going back, 30 years, I told you that I had a database, and I was very, very proud of the fact that at that point in time, I had a database of 350 people, and I would write my newsletter, and then I would mail it to 350 people. And with the passing of time, the newsletter grew, the database grew larger and larger. Well, it got to the point where I realized that if I wanted to start to really communicate with a larger number of people, I would have to start mailing not just to my friends, but to key towns that I really wanted to have a presence in. And then in the past few years, it's just gotten to the point where, like, okay, well, that's going well. Let's grow this thing from 30,000 to 65,000. And all it is, it's simple. You just pay once a year for the, and we used to mail it out, but now obviously we're emailing it out. So it's the same amount of effort on my end. I'm still writing the exact same newsletter, but instead of sending it to 350 people, I bought databases, and now I'm emailing it to 65,000 people. So in addition to that, there's a place for the election. And by the way, that goes out at least once every other week, but most of the time it's once a week. Then in addition to that, we've got my podcast, and my podcast we just started that last year, and it's growing, and it continues to grow. And I continue to hear people approaching me about how much they're enjoying the podcast, because not everybody wants to read the newsletter. Some people want to. And then I decided just in the past 6 months that everybody seems to be focused on print media and the printed word. People seem to be focused on podcasts and audio. But obviously, if you look at Instagram or if you look at TikTok, everybody at this point in time is focused now on video. So we've added video, and I do these. I'm sure it comes off as hubris, but I got to say, I'm doing these really, really great videos where I'm walking people through our new listings, and people are loving that, and that's being mailed out to 65,000 people. So again, and then you mentioned Facebook. I've got the 5,000 friends on Facebook. We're just posting constantly, like, interesting things to Facebook. So we're doing our best to just hit it. At this point in time, it's kind of impossible to live in the region without running into my name at least once a day through some mechanism of some sort.
So when it comes to the newsletter content itself, I know you kind of touched on a few things you said. Give us a taste, because we don't have it in front of us. Give us the flavor of the newsletters, like the information that you are sending out on a weekly basis to your client list or your email list.
So let me back up. So the newsletter, it's a little more hard hitting and a little more factual. Once a month. So and then there's filler in between, but once a month it's heavy hitting, and it's what's going on with the market. And so, recently we're talking about the fact that 8 years ago there were 7,500 homes on the market for sale in the region. Today there are 632 homes on the market for sale in the region. And so it's a great time to sell. But then I've recently had to say, okay, but there are headwinds that are going to, it's going to be a great market for sellers the remainder of this year. But You've got rising inflation, you've got rising interest rates, you've got the war in Ukraine. These are things that are going to be headwinds. So you as a seller might want to go ahead and start to think about putting your house on the market for sale sooner rather than later. So it's really, and I do a lot of reading, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Inman, Real Deal, just constantly trying to educate myself and talk to people and figure out what's going on out there so that I can convey this. And I try and do it in a manner that is lighthearted and humorous, interesting, because nobody wants to, cough up some dusty, a journal article that I've tried to ram down their throat. So, yeah. So
with the, I guess you said it's very factual once a month. Do you have for the, let's say, the other 3 weeks? Then do you have more of a lighthearted spin on some of them, or I guess a less factual, depending on how you look at it? Because it also maybe ties into your videography, because I haven't seen what you're producing, whether your hot take is kind of somewhat of a comedic or it is just a factual base. I mean, we had another guest on our show called Daniel, and his whole video presence had somewhat, it was somewhat of a comedic element to it as well. And that was like what his team was known for. I had this like amazing video content.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that. So, the other 3 weeks and just open up about the podcast and the videographer, because obviously we're on a show now and, we release an episode every single day. And I think actually, if I'm deadly honest, I think you're the first real estate agent who produces a podcast, I'm assuming, for your local market to listen to.
Yes. Yeah, because my audience is different from your audience. My audience is, I'm trying to sell real estate. And so I'm trying to focus on the real estate community, the buyers and sellers here in Rochester. So
amazing.
Yes. So once a week or once a month is the harder hitting newsletter, the more in-depth sort of overview. But then in between, it's usually a video, and I'm producing at least one video a week. So usually twice a month, it's a video. If we get a really, really great podcast, we'll pop that in there. We'll do some market stats, but because so much of my business is based on my relationship with my clients, then there will oftentimes be interspersed photos of me and the team doing something charitable or going out to dinner or that kind of thing. So, but to try and I think that if I were to try and put out a heavy hitting newsletter once a week, I think that I would lose people, because I think that people are very, very interested in that, but they don't want it necessarily all the time. So
I think also it loses its teeth weekly. Like, you don't really need market report updates week by week, right? It's like,
there's so much to say. Yeah,
there's not a lot to say. I'm curious, and I think a lot of our listeners are curious as well about the podcast. Like, that's quite a unique take on essentially educating clients. A big one for us, this is something we're diving headfirst into, is obviously YouTube, and using YouTube to educate clients and guests and whatever for, say our coaching or whatever that we do. We use that as our medium, because we know people go on YouTube and search, how to run, I know, Facebook ads for real estate agents in 2022 and, watch content that we produce. We also have this show as well to help agents, learn actionable tips and strategies that have helped very successful agents like yourself be successful. But we have never heard of a realtor educating their audience using a podcast. Like, for such a niche market, like, you're basically saying everyone in your town has got to try and find your podcast to educate them to sell them a home, I'm assuming. But I would like to learn a little bit more from you on that, because I think it's an interesting strategy there.
So one of the things, I'm very, very fortunate in that one of the agents on my team happens to also be the number one highly rated radio DJ in town.
Oh. What are the odds of that?
Okay. What are the odds of that? Oh, no, I haven't got to the point where it's just like it just happened by happenstance. No. Oh my God. Like, I'm a little more wily and strategic than that. So I mean, I just sit down and, here's what I had to do. I had to buy 2 microphones. I spent, I think, $400 on 2 great microphones. He shows up with his laptop and the software, and we do a little bit of research. But because, as you said a short while ago, there's only so much real estate news, and it does become kind of dry. So we definitely talk a little bit what's going on, but we also talk about some of our upcoming listings. But then we try and pull in different things that are going on nationally. So yesterday's podcast, when we recorded, we talked about oligarchs and how it is they own all this expensive real estate, and whether or not the U.S. government or other sovereign nations are going to be able to take this real estate. And then before the end of the podcast, before we completed, we were talking about the fact that Elon Musk has sold. He pledged 2 years ago that he was going to sell all of his worldly possessions. So in the past 2 years, he sold 7 homes worth $130 million. And Grimes, his girlfriend, has been living in a 400 square foot trailer with him for 2 years, eating peanut butter 8 days consecutively, sleeping on a mattress that has a hole in it. These are all of her words. And so, you talk about that kind of thing, and you just try and bring pop culture into what's going on locally, and maybe some world politics, and you just mix it up and make it interesting for people.
Got it. That's an interesting take. So basically, it's it's like a radio news show type of, like, you're talking about general stuff, and you intertwine, I guess, as much as you can with real estate on the shows, and you're basically just becoming essentially a local celebrity through another medium, which is podcast, right?
Yeah. So
it's a great idea. Really, really, really cool idea.
And I want a very, very small letter C. Very small. So.
Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in gaining access to our course and coaching 100% for free, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com.